Crafting in Last Epoch requires item shards, and there's nothing more frustrating than going to craft on your brand new item, only to find out you don't have the shards that you need. So, to avoid this problem, a lot of people put items on their loot filter specifically to pick up and extract the shards from them. This is done by either Rune of Shattering or Rune of Removal. And today, I'm going to talk about my own best practices when using Rune of Shattering, when I use it, when I don't use it, a few rules about filtering, and how I get them. This is going to be focused very much on the crafting aspect, but if you want to know how to farm items in Last Epoch, that video will be coming out soon, so be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, and for now, let's get into things. I got the idea for this video because I saw a lot of questions from people saying, hey, I've picked up all this stuff, I want to shatter it, but I'm running out of inventory space, I don't have enough gold, and I don't know what to do. So if you take nothing else away from this video, here's a quick TLDR, though I do recommend you watch the full thing for context. Just remember, you don't have to completely fill your inventory and fill your stash with items to shatter. And you don't have to pick up absolutely everything. If it's not interacting with a direct upgrade, or it's not replacing a resource that you've run out of, then it's probably better to keep playing and worry about it later. Sure, once in a while, a really rare class shard might be a blocking point. A good example of this is the Dive Bomb, AoE, and damage, which I did run out of gambling on a bunch of exalted stuff. But for the most part, you'll have plenty of time to filter before you need it on an upgrade. And if you're worried about running out of something, you can always do a quick audit of all the shards you have available, type in some class-specific ones, and if you have 0, toss them on your filter, removal or shatter a couple items, and you should be good to go. But I've seen a lot of players struggling with, okay, but what do I do with all the loot? I'm spending all of my money on these Runes of Shattering, and I'm spending all of my money on stash tabs, and I don't know what to do with it all because so much is dropping. And yes, Last Epoch is a very rewarding game. You're absolutely going to drop more loot than you can pick up, and more loot than you can use. So, the best thing to do is stick to what you actually need in the here and now, with a couple exceptions here and there for things that you don't need right now, but you will in the near future. And so, for example, if you're planning to reroll to a different build, go ahead and put stuff from that on your filter as well. So first up, the filtering phase. I have one rule on my filter which causes all of these blue items to appear. It's right here, recolor shards. The reason it's the lowest priority is I'm only going to shard something if I know it's not an upgrade. So I put it below all of my, this could be an upgrade. Also, the reason it's below this hide rule is because this hide rule is for other class items, so it's never going to hide a shard that I actually need. Then coming in here, I've got all sorts of things, like, oh, damage while wielding a bow. Or maybe it's something like movement speed that I need. Well, if I need that, I can just check this box, and from now on, movement speed will show up. Having a very simple show hide rule is a great way to effectively find shards, and for more about that, I do have a dedicated loot filter video. And then, as you go through, you'll pick up a few upgrades here and there. But what do you do with them once you pick them up? Do they just clutter your inventory? Do they fill endless tabs? I mean, no, that's what exalted and unique items are for. So today, I'm going to talk about shards, sharding, and of course, how to do it. A lot of people will give a new player the advice of, oh, well, whenever you need Runes of Shattering, you should just go buy things from the vendor. You can, shift, right-click. Apparently I left-click because Path of Exile stuff. But yeah, shift, right-click, and you buy it just like that. The problem here is, you get quite a few Runes of Shattering as drops. You also get Runes of Removal. And ultimately, shattering items is a last resort. You shouldn't be doing it as your first point of call. So, for example, going through this list, I'm playing a build that stacks dexterity, and I need a lot of physical and cold resistance. So during the campaign, it might be tempting to go, all right, well, I'll just pick up every item that has dex and shatter it, every item that has cold res and shatter it. But here's the thing, I haven't done that and I have 68 dexterity shards. I have tons and tons of cold res shards, tons of all the res. You'll get very many of these as common drops. Now, if you actually run out, if I had 0 Phys Res shards, would I pick up and shatter a few items? Absolutely yes. When you run out of shards, it's fine to do that. But if you haven't actually run out, the more common shards like resistances and attributes shouldn't really be on your filter as a thing you're picking up and shattering. Instead, you should pick up things with rare affixes. Like, let's just say, increased damage while wielding a bow, falconry level, maybe hybrid health. That's a pretty good one. But here's the other problem. Shattering isn't always the most efficient way to do it either. So let's take a look at this example. I've got level 3 of falconry and level 2 of endurance. If I add my Rune of Shattering, well, all of a sudden, I'll destroy the item and create a random number of affix shards. like that. I got 2 falconry, 1 endurance, so 1 falconry shard was wasted. But there's a more efficient way to do it. And that way is with Rune of Removal. Now, Rune of Removal requires forging potential. You cannot use it on an item with 0 FP, but it gives you all of the shards. So I got 3 health shards there. Now the forging potential is used up, so I have to shatter it. And I got both damage shards. So that worked out pretty well. In some cases, an item only has rank 1 or 2, in which case, honestly, I do just shatter it. In some cases, an item has a bunch of affixes, in which case, I do just shatter it. Because something's better than nothing, and you're unlikely to target it with removals. But in some cases, it only has 2 affixes, or I'm really desperate for something. I really need hybrid health. I don't want to have 1 of them, or I don't want to get all the attunement shards. So a Rune of Removal, I missed, but I have forging potential. A Rune of Removal, there we go. 2 hybrid health shards, and then I throw this on the ground. Right here, level 4 falconry, so I can get 4 shards with Rune of Removal, or a random number with Rune of Shattering. And I want all 4 of those shards. In general, your first priority when extracting shards from gear should be to use Rune of Removal when it's feasible. It's not necessarily feasible here. I'll only get 2 increased damage while wielding a bow shards. And I have to use up to 4 runes of removal, each of which could consume all the forging potential. So we're going to go back and just shatter it. And I got 1 shard, 50% of a value. Here, we've got 4 dive bomb, 1 necro res. This is a perfect candidate for Rune of Removal. And there you go, I got all 4 shards. So if you want a couple of very simple rules of thumb to remember, first, set up your filter with a focus on rare shards. Avoid things like dexterity and resistance in your shard rules unless you actually ran out, because otherwise you're much better served just doing a couple of echoes and getting the shards that you want, or continuing through another couple zones and getting the shards that you want. Second of all, after you pick the item up, take a look at it. If it has 1 tier of a desirable affix, maybe it's fine to just throw Shattering at it. Also, maybe it has 2 or 3 undesirable mods, in which case, throw a Shattering at it. Or maybe it has 0 forging potential because you tried to craft it, your craft failed, and you need to get things back. Go ahead and shatter it, there's nothing better you can do. But Rune of Shattering should be your last resort. You should first plan to use Rune of Removal, since this gives you all of the shards instead of a random allocation. And because of that, buying Runes of Shattering should also be your last resort. You should not buy them unless you have items in your inventory where you're like, I need to get this shard onto an upgrade right now that I want to have equipped, or that I already have equipped, and I don't have any Runes of Removal and I don't have any Runes of Shattering. If you're not running out of resources, save your gold. It's an absolute waste to just buy and shatter everything. You'll accumulate hundreds, if not thousands of shards as you keep playing the game. Also, once you get out of a campaign and into monoliths, you can specifically target farm runes using rune reward echoes. If you're Circle of Fortune, you can also do this very efficiently by grabbing a couple of prophecies. On the other hand, if you're Merchant's Guild, you could buy a cheap item with rare shards specifically to removal or shatter it. So after you join an item faction or reach the endgame, there's quite a bit more flexibility here. Now I have a question for you. If you're a new player, do you feel like you get enough shards, or are you struggling? And if you're an experienced player, what are some of the mistakes that you remember making when new, which you think other newbies should avoid? Be sure to leave those down in the comments below. If you're looking for more crafting content, I have a comprehensive crafting guide, a guide on how to make legendary items, and a guide on how to craft your exalted bases. I'll link to all of those up in the card and down below, along with a guide on loot filtering since that's an important part of this process. Now before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons and channel members for their continued support. For as little as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is also down below. I wanted to make this video because it's a question that I've been seeing a lot, and while I don't struggle with it too much personally, I did realize that I do it quite differently from what a lot of people advise, so I decided to share my experiences. With that said, thank you for watching to the end, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you again sometime soon.